I'm here with Representative Stephen Barrar. He's a Republican from Delaware and Chester counties. Representative, can you tell us about the situation with COVID-19 in your district right now?
Well, right now, the biggest problem in our district is the, I guess you'd say the economic of what's happening with COVID-19 is probably more pressing right now than actually the viruses. We've had, except in our nursing homes in Delaware and Chester County, we've really have had very low cases of COVID-19 throughout the district. And I'm actually right now, because we're about 70 days into this, very concerned about what's going to happen to us economically.
Now, how are you making sure to support the constituents in your district who have been affected by COVID-19, and especially by the business shutdowns that were ordered by Governor Wolf?
Well, we're supporting them by our job in the legislature is not necessarily to render emergency care. That's the hospital's job. To appropriate the dollars that are necessary to keep them open. And because of the federal government, the influx of money from the federal government has been phenomenal right now. We've gotten a lot of money. We're driving that out to our hospitals and to different sectors of our economy, hoping that we've appropriated enough dollars to keep our hospitals open. And one of the problems in our hospitals is the fact that the I guess you'd say non-essential or non-life-threatening surgeries have all been canceled. And what we see happening now, some of the hospitals in Delaware County and Chester County are starting to cut staff because people aren't coming to the emergency rooms like they should be. People having heart attacks and strokes are not coming. They're staying away because they're scared. And now we need to convince people that it's safe to go back to the hospital. I've had a gentleman call me the other day. He's been scheduled for shoulder surgeries and a lot of pain. And I talked to him about getting back to the hospital, and he's very concerned about it because he's convinced that if he walks into the hospital, that there's a likelihood that he will come down with an infection from the COVID virus. So the increase of drug and alcohol abuse has increased dramatically. The use of antidepressants is increasing. I think one doctor had said over 90% increase in the use of antidepressants. So I think, we're starting now to see the other effects of COVID-19, and a lot of this is being done because of the economics.
Now, you're also the majority chairman on the Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee in the House. How have veterans been affected by COVID-19 and this pandemic? Well,
outside of the nursing homes, with the state, a lot of people aren't aware of it, the state actually runs 6 nursing homes that are just exclusively for veterans and their spouses. Okay. In the Southeast, we've seen an increase in the number of COVID-19 infections and also the deaths in those nursing homes. I think the last time we got an update from the Adjutant General, I think there were 22 fatalities there. And also amongst the people that work there, the staff have also had a rather large increase of the staff of the infection. So they are being affected. Outside of the nursing homes, I don't think it's has been as bad. But within our nursing homes, we've seen quite a bit of sadly, quite a few deaths there. And I know the general has taken every step possible to try to isolate those patients and then to isolate the staff once they are deemed to be test positive.
What legislation has your committee been working on to help support the veterans and to help support Pennsylvanians who have been affected by COVID-19?
Well, again, it's basically making sure that the PPE is there for them. The National Guard has been dispatched throughout the state of Pennsylvania to different places to set up temporary hospital beds and temporary hospitals throughout the state. And we had one in my own district in Glen Mills, the old Glen Mills school, which used to be, when I was a kid, was a reform school. And my father, when I was bad, my father would always say, I'm going to send you to Glen Mills if you don't straighten out. But it really worked out great. We had the capability of a couple hundred beds in there, but it was only up for about 2-3 weeks before we realized that the surge of patients into our hospitals wasn't taking place in Delaware County, and they were able to dismantle it and move it to another part of the state. And the National Guard has been doing this all over. Plus, in several nursing homes in Chester and Delaware County, the National Guard is there backing up the current staff and doing a lot of the keeping the supply chains open to the hospitals for PPE and other provisions that they need in our nursing homes.
Now, the other part of the committee title is emergency preparedness.
Yes.
Did you think Pennsylvania was prepared for an emergency, a pandemic like this one?
You know what? It's hard to say yes and no on that, because I don't think there's one answer is actually fit. I don't think we were prepared for it in the sense that we didn't have the right amount of PPE, because we never expected to have to use that much. And so from that point of view, yes, we weren't prepared enough. We've learned a lot about how to prepare for a pandemic like this in the future, but we also weren't prepared in other ways that, just like our unemployment system was completely overwhelmed. We have 2.3 million people in the unemployment system right now, and the thousands of more who have not been able to get through to it. They were totally taken off guard by this pandemic when, they got hit with I think in a week, they got hit with something like 1.5 million people applying for unemployment compensation, and they haven't been able to keep up with that. Even now, my office gets hundreds of calls every day. But as far as legislation goes, one thing that came through the legislatively was a $30 million out of the CARES money to give to our ambulance and fire companies, our EMS people, to make sure that they are able to get the PPE they need and also have the funding that they need to keep their doors open, to pay the paramedics and that type of thing. But the thing that is probably most pressing right now is that there was a bill that we moved out of our committee last Thursday. We moved a bill out that was a House resolution, a concurrent resolution with the Senate, in order to bring this pandemic to an end. A lot of our businesses are hurting. We've already gotten notices from dozens and dozens of businesses that they will never open their doors again. We feel it's time to end this state of emergency and come back to start into a normal type of conditioning with safeguards in place according to the CDC, and allow our businesses to open. You can't take care of the physical health only. We need to take care of the economic health. People say, follow the science. We are following the science. The science of economics says that if we don't do something soon, that we are going to see a total collapse of our economy. We need to take care of the economics in order to take care of the health. We can do all these great things for people in hospitals and our ambulance companies if we have revenue coming into the state. If we don't, a lot of that is going to stop. And that's what people don't understand. We can only print so much money before we really damage our economic system. Right now, we could be faced with Jimmy Carter style inflation from the 1980s. And we don't want to see that. But right now, we're starting to see our economy open up slowly. It's opening up safely, and I think we need to push it the rest of the way. And that's what that resolution that passed the House committee. And now my understanding is that tomorrow the entire House will have a chance to vote on that resolution, 836.
Can you give us a little more details about this resolution and why it was so important for your committee to look at ending this emergency declaration that Governor Wolf put in place?
Well, I think a lot of us are concerned that Governor Wolf is going to extend this state of emergency for another 90 days. And we really believe that it's going to do irreparable harm to our economy. And like I said earlier, we've seen depression on the increase. We've seen from people being shut in too long. We're seeing the number of suicides increase dramatically. The use of antidepressants are increasing. And I just think, if you listen to the people out there, a lot of people are over this. They want to get back to some sense of normalcy. And there's a large group of people out there that don't think they think we need to wait until we have a vaccine or a cure, or maybe drugs that work better. And that was never the goal here when we went into the state of emergency. And the goal was to suppress that surge into our hospitals so that our hospitals were not overwhelmed, to give us time to bring medicines into the hospitals and into our medical community, and also to be able to bring enough PPE into the community so that our healthcare workers could be protected from this infection.
Now, one final question. How can Pennsylvanians, especially those who are on the front line and who are most vulnerable, continue to keep themselves safe from this pandemic as Pennsylvania continues and starts to reopen?
Well, I think, listening to what the healthcare community is saying, as far as, there's a lot of dispute over the mask, okay? Half the people believe that we don't need to wear masks, especially outside, maybe inside, and other people believe we should have masks on all the time. I think that's going to come down to a personal choice for most people. I know in certain stores you go into, they won't allow you in without a mask. I try to keep, I probably have 5 or 6 in my car right now that I rotate through, and then try to sanitize them so I can keep reusing them. I try to be very respectful to other people's feelings on this, because not everybody is as comfortable as other people might be. So we just want to be respectful to each other. And the mask isn't a statement of supporting one political party or another. It's a common sense thing to do. If you feel comfortable wearing it, wear it. And I think most people do. I've seen a lot of use especially in some of the stores I go to and talk to people, and a lot of them feel that the mask is absolutely necessary. But the best thing to do is if to protect yourself, is just pay attention to the news and listen to what the healthcare professionals, which I'm not one, and I don't play one on TV except for the few minutes that I'm here with you. But I just think pay attention to what the healthcare professionals are telling you. And, I think we should come out of this okay.
Representative Stephen Barrar, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I'm here with Treasurer Joe Torsella. Treasurer, can you tell us about the impact of COVID-19 and what that impact has been on the Treasury Department?
Sure. Well, as has been reported, the impact on the state's finances and on the families around the state's finances has been severe in both cases. But before we even talk about that, I guess I've got to say, every time we talk about COVID-19, let's always remember this is first and foremost a healthcare calamity and a loss of human life. These secondary effects are devastating, but let's remember what's really at stake here, and that's losing precious Pennsylvanians that we love, who are dear to us, who are friends and neighbors and family. Now, we have seen in the past two months a dramatic change in the state's fiscal condition, as roughly $4 billion of revenue that was expected this year is not there. Some of that has been deferred to July by the change in date of the tax filing, but some of that is gone, and projections for next year are they're very murky at this point. But nobody thinks that the picture is going to look as good as it did just a few months ago. And for the families who make up our state, which, remember, we can always talk about the state as an abstraction, but it's really a collection. We're 13 million people, and it's those finances we care about too. We are seeing a level of economic stress unlike anything that I've ever lived through. We have gone to an extraordinary number of Pennsylvanians who are unemployed, who are hurting. Before this crisis, there were a large percentage of families who couldn't find $400 for an emergency. Well, that emergency has arrived, and it's left a lot of Pennsylvanians in real difficult need.
So what has the Treasury Department been doing to help support these Pennsylvanians who are in need at this moment? Yeah,
so from day one of this crisis, we've kept asking ourselves that question, which is, what can we do? The first thing we can do, and I'm proud to say we did this, and we were earlier than many around the country, to protect our Treasury family and their families in Pennsylvania, we re-engineered a way of making Treasury run. we didn't have the luxury of saying at Treasury, hang up a sign, we'll see you when the pandemic's over. We are what you and the state depend on to get the checks out, to audit the checks before they get paid out, and to mind the money and keep an eye on it. So we found a way of doing that we haven't missed a beat. We've been there for 529 holders, for unclaimed property, citizens who have that, and have kept things going. But that's just where we started, not where we stopped. The first thing we did was said, clearly the healthcare system is under enormous stress. So we created a program where we stepped into the bond market and said, we're going to be ready to buy the bonds issued by some of these institutions if the interest rates go haywire again, as they did for 2 weeks, which put strain on their budgets. We approved with partners, approved a loan to advance nearly $500 million to hospitals in the time between now and when they fully get their federal reimbursement, which took a lot of the strain off, especially some of our smaller and more rural hospitals. We extended a line of credit to the Commonwealth from our investment funds to the end of the fiscal year, and at a kind of preferential interest rate, because we said we want everyone's attention focused, as it should be, on beating COVID-19, not scrambling to get out there in the public debt market at a time when it was a terrible idea. But then what we started doing was asking, those were the kind of obvious urgent questions. We started asking the bigger questions, and that is, how can we help Pennsylvania families who are going through an unprecedented level of strain? And we've done that by using the power of their shares to stand up for their interests. So Pennsylvania led a coalition of state treasurers and other fiscal officers, including our Auditor General, in demanding that ventilator companies release their repair manuals to hospitals so they could make repairs to have enough ventilators to get us through the crisis. And I'm proud to tell you, and applause to the companies, most of the largest companies have agreed. 2 have not yet. I hope they will change their mind. And we've innovated, even in a pandemic. We said, okay, in the summer, property tax and rent rebate checks are set to go out. It's the biggest printing job of the year for us normally, but we said, well, why can't we get them out sooner? Because people are hurting now. Why do we have to wait until July? So working with legislative partners and the governor, we found a way to send these out early. We actually sent out 100,000 this week. We'll be sending out 60,000 a week, average of $500 a check. That's $50 million in the first week out to Pennsylvania families who need it. And then finally, I should mention, we've all been reading about the stimulus checks coming from the federal government. And we also read about how some Pennsylvanians didn't have anywhere to go without paying a fee to cash them. So we asked our largest, the banks that we do the most business with, we said, we want you to agree to cash these checks without a fee, to cash them for customers and non-customers alike, and to not offset any late fees or overdraft fees against stimulus monies, which are there to help people in need, not to enrich the bank balance sheet. And I'm glad to tell you that the 2 largest banks, PNC and Wells Fargo, that we do business with, agreed. Now 14 of all the banks we work with have agreed. I'm hopeful by the end of a week or two, it'll be all of them. So we keep asking, how can we make a difference for Pennsylvania families? And we have some other things in the works that maybe you'll have me back to talk to you about in another month or so that I think will be even more impactful.
Now, you and the governor have recently made an announcement about the property tax and rent rebate program. Can you explain what that announcement was and how that's going to help Pennsylvanians in need during this time? This
program is an important part of our safety net here in Pennsylvania. A lot of our older and some of our most vulnerable Pennsylvanians depend on it. What it does essentially is that if you're a Pennsylvanian above a certain age, if you're above 65, if you're a widow or widower above 50, and your income is at a certain level, that you every year will get a rebate. Average is $500. It can, depending on your situation, can range as much as $650 to $950 for the property tax or the rent that you pay. So for someone, say, making $25,000, that's a considerable amount of money back in their pockets. Now, normally, and it's funded, by the way, from proceeds, principally from proceeds from the lottery. Normally, these checks are issued on July 1st for a week or two after that, and they're the largest physical printing of checks we do during the course of the year. But we said, given the devastation economically that the pandemic has caused, these Pennsylvanians need this money sooner. Can we find a way to get it to them sooner? So I'm really proud of the team at Treasury, which is doing all this, in the middle of a pandemic and working remotely and innovating to find new ways. Working with the governor and working with partners in the General Assembly, and shout out to Representatives Jared Solomon and Martina White, who sponsored the bill that made this possible. We found a way to, instead of doing one big batch at the beginning of the fiscal year, to advance it now in May, and to say we're going to process these on a first in, first out basis. And we're going to start by sending out 111,000 checks, which we've done. On average, $500 a check, that's $55 million. It's going to our most vulnerable families at a time when they desperately need it. And our way of saying we're here for you, Pennsylvania. We understand that we work for you. These are unusual and challenging times. We're going to do our very best. If it involves breaking down a silo or finding a new way of doing business, or looking beyond an old precedent, just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way.
How can people make sure to protect themselves financially during such a difficult time where things are very much in limbo and up in the air?
It's difficult. We understand the enormous challenge and uncertainty that people are feeling. For those who are fortunate enough to continue to have a job and to continue to have income, all the things that we say in ordinary times about the importance of saving and providing for your financial future, whether it's setting aside a little money for retirement or emergencies, or for your children's education after high school, all those things still apply. Just because the markets are going crazy and just because there's all this uncertainty out there doesn't mean that anyone should take their eye off the long-term behaviors, the smart behaviors that work through thick and thin. Are to set a little bit of money aside, understanding there's an illusion you have to be Warren Buffett to effectively save and invest, and you don't. If a family puts $25 a month into a 529 account from the day their child is born, that child will have $10,000 by the time he or she graduates high school. Little steps make big differences. For those Pennsylvanians who are suffering because they've lost their job, what I want to say is there are resources here for you. We're going to keep advocating in Washington and Harrisburg that there be more resources here for you. But please check our website for what those resources are, so you're claiming every last one that you're entitled to, because we know that you are going through a very difficult time. We don't have all the answers, but we do know that there are ways that both state government and the federal government can help, and we want to make sure you know about every one of them, including this one, including getting your rent rebate check early. And then finally, I just want to say a word for those Pennsylvanians who are fortunate enough to continue to be employed, but have the obligation imposed on them to do things the rest of us don't have to do, whether that's to put themselves at risk in a healthcare setting, or to keep our grocery store shelves stocked, or to deliver the packages that let many of us, stay home in a way to stop the spread of this. I want to say thank you, first of all, and I want to pledge to you that what we're going to do at Treasury is to continue to use the power of your money the investments the state owns to stand up on your behalf and for your rights and for you. So for everyone, though, I want to urge again where I started to remember this will pass. We will find a way to get back to better times, but it's going to take all of us. It's going to take all of us doing whatever our part is to keep each other safe and then to help each other back up. And that's the best of who we are as Pennsylvanians, is when we remember we're not a bunch of 13 atomized individuals. We are one community, one commonwealth. And that's how we'll get through this, if we remember that and keep that front of mind.
State Treasurer Joe Torsella, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I'm here with Secretary Teresa Miller of the Department of Human Services. Secretary Miller, what has your department been doing to help support Pennsylvanians who are in need during the time of this pandemic?
We've been doing quite a lot. So at the Department of Human Services, we support about 3 million Pennsylvanians in a variety of ways. So we provide healthcare coverage for people through our Medicaid program, our children's health insurance program. We also provide really critical supports to older Pennsylvanians and people with disabilities who need help with their daily activities. So we've been doing a number of things. We also, one of the really critical programs that we provide or administer is a critical nutrition program called the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. This is a program that every day, but certainly during this pandemic, is helping to put food on the tables of over 1.8 million Pennsylvanians. So these are all kind of programs we administer. We're also the Child Welfare Agency, and we are an agency that oversees our early learning programs, our early childhood and early learning programs. So we've been doing a lot of different things to try to expand SNAP where we can, sort of use that program in any way we can to provide additional support to families that we know are really struggling in this pandemic. So for example, we set up pretty quickly here, we've set up a pandemic electronic benefit transfer program, or what we call the PEBT program. And this program is really to bridge a gap, because we know a lot of families relied on and were eligible for free and reduced price lunches through school. So their kids were able to get breakfast and lunches at school. With schools shutting down, of course, that has created a real gap. So we established this program to help those families and help them again, just put food on the table for their families. So that has turned into a one-time payment of about $370 per child for those families. It's a temporary program. It's just a one-time payment essentially for families to just help them bridge that gap. Another thing we've done with the SNAP program that we're really excited about, and this is going to come online here in the beginning of June, is we are allowing SNAP recipients to purchase online. Obviously, we're in a pandemic, and everything we can do to social distance and not put ourselves in harm's way is really important. And for many of us, we've been able to order groceries online, but for SNAP recipients, that hasn't been available until now. So we've been working with the federal government to participate in a pilot program that will allow SNAP recipients to purchase groceries online. There are still some restrictions. You can only use SNAP dollars to pay for food, so your delivery charges, for example, aren't covered. And there are only 3 participating retailers in this program today: Walmart, ShopRite, and Amazon. So there are some limitations, but we are really excited that we're able to provide SNAP recipients with another way to get food, but also do it in a way that allows them to protect themselves.
Now, you say that program will be starting at the beginning of June. How will SNAP recipients be able to go online and buy these groceries online? What will that look like?
So like anyone else goes online, if you go to Amazon or you go to ShopRite's website and or Walmart's website, you can purchase groceries just like anyone else can. And now you can actually use your EBT card, your SNAP benefits, to do that.
Now, as the counties in Pennsylvania are moving into yellow and green phases in Governor Wolf's reopening plan, what is your department doing to help with that process and to help your partners and your participants in your programs to help everything run smoothly and keep things operating as we're reopening?
Absolutely. So we just issued some guidance this morning to try to let people know what this phased approach looks like for DHS's programs. And the key is, especially as we move from red to yellow, not a lot really changes with our programs. We support, as I mentioned, a lot of older Pennsylvanians, a lot of people with disabilities, people in congregate care settings. And for those settings in particular, we really need to make sure that we continue visitation restrictions and all of those protections that we had in place, those will continue. So really not much changes. One of the big changes for DHS in moving to the yellow phase is the reopening, potentially at least if childcare providers want to, reopening childcare. Any of us who have young children, I have a 4-year-old, know how critical childcare is to allowing us to do our jobs. And I think if we didn't appreciate the value of childcare before, we certainly do now. And child care facilities in the red zone have been able to continue operating under a waiver if they wanted to support essential personnel. As we know, throughout this pandemic, we have a lot of essential personnel, people that we may not previously have thought of as essential personnel even, who have been really critical to making sure we can continue to go to the grocery store and buy groceries, who make sure that if we need health care, they're there to provide that health care service. So those families have continued to need childcare, and in a lot of red areas, childcare providers have been operating under a waiver. As we move into the yellow phase, all childcare providers will be able to open without a waiver if they choose. Families who want to send their children back to childcare will be able to do that. There are CDC guidelines that are very specific about childcare facilities, how they need to operate in this pandemic to make sure that they're protecting staff and protecting children as they continue to operate. So we've been working to help educate the childcare providers, make sure they understand those guidelines, make sure they understand who should be wearing a mask and when, and cleaning procedures, and all of those really important protections that they need to put in place to make sure that we're keeping kids and staff safe as they reopen.
What have been the biggest concerns that you've heard from these childcare providers when it comes to following these guidances and making sure that they're keeping their staff and the children in that center safe?
Sure, we've heard concerns that it's been really tough to buy all the cleaning supplies you need, given how often you need to clean. One of the concerns we've heard, frankly, not just from childcare providers, but from a lot of providers, is just being able to purchase the cleaning supplies that they need to be able to do the cleaning regimen that they need to do. That's been one of the things. I think also just childcare providers really have to figure out how to operate fundamentally differently. So they've got to screen children as they come in. I think they're having the same discussions, frankly, that we're having around our county assistance offices and thinking about reopening them. How do you keep people safe? How do you limit the number of people coming into a building so that you're just reducing the exposure for everyone who's going to be in there? And those are all the things. How do we take temperatures in the morning? How do we make sure that we're keeping children in smaller groups and keeping them together, but not necessarily mixing children during the day, maybe not having group lunches, things like that. So they just really do have to rethink how they operate. The CDC guidelines are really good and very specific in terms of what needs to be done. So I think a lot of the childcare providers are just spending a lot of time with those guidelines, trying to figure out how they're going to implement that in their facility.
Now, something else that your department looks after are long-term care facilities. How have they been affected by this pandemic, and how is the reopening of counties going to affect them?
Yeah, so we've got over 45,000 Pennsylvanians who live in over 1,200 personal care homes and assisted living facilities. We don't license nursing homes. Department of Health licenses nursing homes, but we license the personal care homes and assisted living facilities. All of these, of course, are really key facilities in this pandemic because they provide round-the-clock care to some of our most vulnerable Pennsylvanians. Unlike nursing facilities, for personal care homes and assisted living residences, they typically don't have a lot of clinical staff. So dealing with this pandemic and dealing with COVID positive cases and potential outbreaks, especially with a population that's very vulnerable to this disease, That's been really scary for a lot of these facilities because, again, they just don't have that clinical staff that nursing facilities have. So one of the things that my department did really early on in this pandemic is we established an important partnership that we called the Educational Support and Clinical Coaching Program, or what we call ESCIP, because we have to have an acronym for everything. And so what this was is really, it's a partnership with DHS, and at the time when we started it was 5 healthcare systems. And now it's 9 health systems, and then the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. And this partnership provides webinars a couple times a week now to, I think at this point we've touched almost 2,000 staff, providing webinars on how you do everything from screening patients and screening staff in the morning or when they come into their shifts to how do you deal with an outbreak and all of the things that they need to know. We've been able to connect them with experts in health systems. So we've done, from the department's perspective, we did kind of an initial assessment to figure out where are the kind of concerns that these groups have, and then connecting them with those experts in the health system to make sure that that they get the supports that they need. They have kind of that coaching that they might need for those clinical services that they just haven't had to provide before. So that is one of the big concerns. As we move to yellow, these again are going to be those places that not much is going to change, except from the department's perspective, we're going to be doing everything we can to continue to provide those supports when there's an outbreak, doing everything we can to figure out how to address it, make sure we've got some actually really good stories that I just heard this morning about a facility that a couple days ago sounded really bad, but we had other facilities step in and take some of the staff. We were able to get some staffing help in there, and we were able to really turn it into a much more positive outcome. So that's been our focus, is how do we provide the supports that those facilities need in a time where they're caring for people who are really susceptible to this virus.
Now, your department helps support these different facilities as well as different assistance programs. For those people who are really struggling during this time in the pandemic, how can they find out what assistance programs they might be eligible for through your department?
Yeah, I would encourage anyone who is struggling in this time. Our department is here for anyone who needs us at any point in time. Our website for people who are interested in applying for programs is www.compass.state.pa.us, and that is where, for any of the programs that we provide, whether it's SNAP benefits, we also have an emergency assistance program that's been getting cash to some of our lowest income Pennsylvanians. We have our LIHEAP program that helps with utility bills. All of these programs can be accessed through that Compass website, and I would encourage anyone who's struggling, this is why we're here as a department, to reach out and see if you're eligible for these programs and get the help you need.
Secretary Teresa Miller, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Spending time with WNBA All-Star with the Connecticut Sun and Pennsylvania native Alyssa Thomas. The season was supposed to start, Alyssa, in the middle of the middle of May for the WNBA. And obviously, like everything else in the world of sports, that is right now shut down. So what are you hearing? What do you think might be happening over the course of whether it be the next couple of weeks, next month or so, in terms of whether or not the WNBA might still be trying to get their season in for 2020?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I think they're still, trying to figure everything out. Everything is always changing daily. So right now, I think they're just trying to figure out the best way to, possibly have a season and at the same time care about our safety.
Now, the NBA has been discussing the possibility when their season, or if their season does resume, of putting everything in either one location or maybe 2 locations and not making use of home arenas. Obviously, arenas are going to be empty for the foreseeable future. I'm just curious where you fit in that world. Would it be okay for you to play? I mean, you're going to be playing in empty arenas one way or another, it would appear. Would you like that idea that you kind of all get centralized and play in one area, or would you rather do it in your own home arena?
I mean, of course, everybody wants to play in their own home arena, but I think at this point it's about trying to control everybody's safety, and I think it just makes sense to put everybody at one site where you can monitor everything.
So the other piece of the puzzle for you, and you, like so many other players in the WNBA, spend your quote-unquote off-season in Europe playing professional basketball in the European leagues. A A lot of the players in the WNBA, like you, do the same thing. And you were competing in the Czech Republic. You've been there for the last couple of years, and you were in the playoffs with your Czech Republic team, and that ultimately got shut down. So this is really kind of a double dip for you. You got one season shut down and the other season on hold, all because of the same situation. So it's been kind of a weird scenario for you, but in some ways, I'm thinking it gave you a little bit of a break as well from one season to the next.
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, I'm playing year round. Don't really have an off season or a time to just spend with my family, be at home, do what I want to do. Of course, I would love to be playing basketball right now, but I am happy to have this time. I've been able to spend a lot of time with my family, which I haven't really had in 5 to 6 years. So for me, there are some positives to it.
So speaking of the playoffs, last season, the Connecticut Sun made it to the championship round of the playoffs. Actually, it's the first time the Sun got to the championship round of the playoffs. And obviously, you had a great series. Unfortunately for you, the series ended in Game 5, a best of Game 5 series, and you lost to Washington Mystics in the championship game, the championship series, Game 5. I would think there's a bit of satisfying and frustrating all at the same time. Satisfying because you finally got to the championship series, but I'm sure you're frustrated because you ultimately didn't come home with the trophy.
Absolutely. I mean, I think for the longest in my career, it was just about making it to the playoffs. And, we made it to playoffs and then we would get knocked out in the first round. So finally, we were able to make it to the finals. We were able to take it to Game 5, but unfortunately came up short. And, like you said, Washington Mystics pulled off the win, but definitely excited for when the season will start and to hopefully be back there again.
Now, your team, the Connecticut Sun, made a very interesting move in the offseason. You had the Sun were scheduled. You actually had two of the top 10 picks in the WNBA draft, and they made the decision to make the trade for that and bring in a veteran player. Obviously, that's pretty much of an indication to me, and for you, I'm sure, as a player, that they're kind of putting all the chips on the table to go for it all right now.
Absolutely. I think for so long we've been a young team. We haven't had a lot of playoff experience on our team. And, this offseason we went out and got, another all-star, somebody that's won a WNBA championship and can really help our team. And I'm just excited that she wanted to come to Connecticut and play with us. And I'm just looking forward to getting out on the court with her.
So you got to the finals in the WNBA. Again, your team is in the playoffs and looking for a long run in Europe. You get to the WNBA finals. When you were at Maryland, you had a great career at Maryland, an All-American career at Maryland. You're still the all-time leading scorer in Maryland basketball history. You got as far as the Final Four in your senior season at Maryland. So the last time that Alyssa Thomas got to hold up the ultimate trophy as a champion was 2008. You were a 10th grader at Central Dauphin High School, and you won the state championship. A long time since you held up that trophy, but I'm sure you still probably have some really great memories from your days at CD.
Absolutely. That year we won state championship, first in school history for women's basketball. It was huge for us. I still remember it to this day. Playing with that team, we had something special. We were super close on and off the court, and it translated to the court, and we were able to, beat teams that should have won the championship that year.
The interesting thing for you, you're a 10th grader and you won the state championship, so you're probably thinking, okay, well, this is commonplace. I'm going to win a lot more championships when it's all said and done. Unfortunately, you're still looking for that ultimate second championship, but you got a little bit spoiled by winning it so early in your career.
Absolutely. It was unexpected, but it comes with the territory. Each and every year it's harder. The competition gets better as you continue your career. So I am looking for another championship, and I don't know when or where it will come in my career.
The other piece of the puzzle, and again, the competition level of high school basketball in the state of Pennsylvania is really, really good. And I'm sure you probably were able to learn a lot and garner a lot to help propel you to the career that you had playing your high school basketball right here in Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. I still say to this day, I played against a lot of great athletes growing up. Division II, Division III, Division I. That we had a lot of great athletes during my time, and it definitely has helped me throughout my career. I remember those days playing against, Harrisburg, CD East, who had great athletes too. I'm very thankful for where I've came from, and it's a huge part of the person I am today.
So the person you are today, and I hate to bring up the age of a young lady, but that's what I'm going to do. You just turned 28 very, very recently. You're now going to be your 7th year in the WNBA. You get to that point in time where you start to think, what might and how long might this career be able to go? I'm sure you have a lot of goals still ahead of you, but your ultimate thought process, how many more years you think your body can hold up playing as much basketball as you've been playing, and what you think you want to do when your basketball career comes to an end?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I think about each and every day. You don't know when your career could come to an end. But for me, I think I'm going to go as long as my body can. When I feel that I don't have any more to give, I think that's when I'll shut it down. As far as what I want to do after basketball, I probably would get into coaching. I think it would be hard for me to just get away from the game. It's been a huge part of my life. So I definitely could see coaching as the next step for me.
Well, Alyssa Thomas, you're Pennsylvania proud, and it's great for you, everything you've accomplished in your career. Again, an all-state player in high school, an all-American player at college, and now an all-star in the WNBA. Hope you're playing basketball soon, but I also hope you get a chance to enjoy your rest over the course of the next few weeks, but I hope you're bouncing to basketball real soon.
Thank you so much.
You bet. WNBA All-Star Alyssa Thomas joining us today.